Ah, yes. It's that time of year again. The end of the year where I rank the 16 manga that I read this. What's that? I didn't read all the manga this year? Ah, yes. It's that time of year again. You know the time, every time of year, where I've listed some of my favorite things from the year. I don't really know what happened. I was a little over halfway through Dorohedoro, and I was really enjoying it, but then I just couldn't get myself to keep reading it, and after that, I hit a really long manga reading slump. It also just did not help that I challenged myself to play all kinds of new video games this year, and had a lot of different editing challenges for other videos I've posted. Mostly, I just lost track of time and lost any steam to actually finish the challenge about 6 months through the year. All that to say, I'm not going to be ranking the 16 manga that I read this year, and rather just naming some of my favorite things of 2024. Even if I did not finish my TBR, I still read some incredible manga, watched some great anime, played some fantastic video games, and even watched a movie or two. And I love talking about what I love, so that is how we are going to wrap up the end of this year with just a chill video where we're talking about things I like. You'll just get 15 things instead of 16 manga. So sit back, grab your hot drink of choice, and relax. Since I am primarily a manga and sometimes anime channel, we'll get into those first though. I don't want to keep the people waiting. So we're going to start it off with a manga that was actually on my original TBR list, Children of the Whales. It was one that hooked me immediately from the first volume. Even though it is pretty lengthy as well, with 23 in total, I could not put this one down. I have already talked in depth about the full story in another video that I made, like basically at the beginning of the year, but on top of a really great story, it's also just one of the most gorgeously illustrated series. This sci-fi fantasy series is somehow able to capture a lived-in and homey feeling while also revealing secrets at the same time through our main character, Chakro. It was pretty hard for me to not draw comparisons to Attack on Titan while I was reading this though, because they have quite similar premises. But where I was finding myself thinking that Attack on Titan's themes fell short, Children of the Whales was actually able to keep up with its anti-war themes that it presents. This is really bolstered because the main theme of the series is that empathy and love for your fellow man will always unite us when we're in need. At times, the story did falter. It's not like I have no criticisms of it. Plus, the portrayal of dark-skinned characters as being the bad guys at first gave me some trepidations as well. But overall, I think Children of the Whales really stuck the landing for its ending and solidified it as a really good 9 out of 10 manga. Another series that was actually on my original TBR list that would have gotten the top spot on a ranking video if I had done one is Sleeping Dead. This is a BL manga that I actually had found maybe a couple years ago now, because I remember the mangaka of Chainsaw Man, Tatsuki Fujimoto, actually recommended it on a list. It was on the back burner of my TBR for a while, and I figured I might as well just bite the bullet this year, and man, was this 2-volume series incredible. Part Frankenstein, part romance, this series strikes a delicate balance between trivial, everyday moments and the darkness that lies in each of us. The two characters of Sada and Mamiya are incredibly deep and complex people that you start to understand their actions more and more as the series continues. You even start to sympathize with the more fucked up decisions that they make throughout, and you really feel the desperation as their actions increasingly put them in more difficult situations. If you know anything about me, you know that I love a deeply fucked up romance series, and this manga is truly just so twisted, but still having a very lovely undercurrent of romance. Sada's endless understanding and concern juxtaposed to Mamiya's seemingly seedy veneer is just a really good dynamic. Throughout the series, having Mamiya's walls just start to crumble and break, and then you hit the ending of this manga, it really just hits that much harder. I did end up giving this one a 9 out of 10, and honestly, I should have just given it a 10 out of 10. I am always thinking about this series, but it was a little shorter, so I ended up just not giving it a perfect score. But either way, we need this series in English yesterday. The last manga that was actually on my original list of 16 manga series is a former CMX title that's called Two Flowers for the Dragon. A delightful little fantasy romance series that actually felt a lot like a predecessor for Yona of the Dawn. It even involves dragons and a weapon-wielding bodyguard. Although, unlike Yona, this series does have a much more heavy-handed romance plot that kind of can feel like it's getting in the way of some of the more interesting things in the story as it continues. However, don't get me wrong, it's still incredibly fun. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on this list. The manga is led by the dragon-blooded Shikuya of the Dragon Clan, who is stuck between two fiancés and needs to figure out which one she likes more. The series then takes you on a journey through the desert with decadent Chinese and Middle Eastern inspired settings. As the story weaves itself through these 7 breezy volumes like a dragon in the sky, you'll also feel like you've just gone on an epic adventure with action, deceit, romantic tension, and so much more. My biggest complaint of this series was really that the art was a little hard to follow at times. The action in the series was fun, but it didn't flow very well, so it was kind of hard to discern what was going on. And honestly, I would levy this same criticism against a lot of this mangaka's other works as well. Other than this though, Two Flowers for the Dragon felt like such a classic shoujo manga from the 2000s. It did have a pretty good balance by the end of adventure and romance, plus I will always give points to a series where I won the love triangle. That's what really matters in the end, right? The next manga I read this year was one that I actually hadn't heard of until I started working on my queer subtext and shoujo manga video, as well as my Asuka magazine deep dive video. Sword of Paros is like if Cinderella met Gladiator and thematically centered on gender, sexuality, and the patriarchy. Suffice to say, this shoujo yuri series changed the trajectory of my life after I finished reading it, quickly skyrocketing to one of my absolute favorite manga that I have ever read. Even though the series is just a bite-sized 3 volumes, the story told within its pages are as vast in depth as any fairy tale romance, immediately sweeping us off our feet, quite literally, with Princess Erminia saving our damsel in distress, Fiona, thus the two falling in love at first sight. Whether Erminia could be called a princess is up for debate. The struggle that this character feels towards their gender, as well as their feelings towards Fiona, is just a cacophony of queer angst. All of this is underlined by the patriarchal society that they live in, with the king forcing them to marry a man no matter what. While Lady Oscar from Rose of Versailles kind of has her hands too full to actually sit down and really wonder about her gender identity, Erminia has a chance to really revel in this. The character, although a knight and an excellent fighter, gets entrapped in the castle and can't really do anything else with their life, so they have nothing else to do other than wonder about the restrictions put on people with female bodies. So whether Erminia feels some type of way about their body because of the patriarchy or their feelings towards another woman, the story is still incredibly crafted on this one inner struggle. As a fellow gender struggler, Erminia's plight really hit home for me and probably is why this series was just so good in my eyes. For being a series that was created in the late 80s, Sword of Paros really has an in-depth and complex discussion about these topics, making this Grecian-inspired fairy tale one that everyone should read at some point in their life. Sword of Paros is the first manga I've given a 10 out of 10 in quite a while. To wrap up the list of manga that I enjoyed this year, we have another Yuri series that I just randomly happened to find. The Moon on a Rainy Night. Turns out as well that only a couple months after I started reading this one, it got announced for an anime adaptation. So, perfect timing on my part. This Yuri really ticked all my boxes for a romance manga with just the copious amounts of yearning and angst. In addition to dishing out some really good drama and emotional story beats. This manga decides to tackle other kinds of hearing impairment that series like it haven't done before. One of the main characters, Colleen, has a hard time hearing out of one side of her ear and just has gradual hearing loss in general. So she can somewhat hear still, but just has a really hard time discerning sounds. While other series I've read that had a similar subject didn't really go into a person's disabilities, The Moon on a Rainy Night plunges in head first. It really wants the audience reading it to understand about people with hearing loss or deafness, and really understanding the struggles that they go through in a world that doesn't really cater to them. This is all backdropped by the musical aspect of the series as well. Our other main character, Saki, takes piano lessons from Colleen's mom, which gives these two characters a chance to bond over their love for music and slowly letting them trust each other with their insecurities. Overall, this manga is truly fantastic with some really gorgeous artwork to boot. If you still have not tried out a Yuri series, then let this be your first one. It's perfect for anyone who is a fan of A Sign of Affection, or maybe even a series like Nana. It's a standout work in this genre of manga, and probably my favorite Yuri series to have come out in recent years. Alright, so let's get into a few of the anime that I watched this year and really enjoyed. This is honestly the year that I've probably watched the most anime, and not just seasonals. A friend of mine and I have been doing watch-alongs for the entire year, and so it really has helped me catch up on series that have gone off my radar and I finally have been able to watch. For the most part though, it was really these seasonals that still hooked me as some of my favorite watches this year. Starting with Cherry Magic, a BL series that has a wildly popular fandom in Japan as well as the States too. With a subtitle like 30 years of virginity can make you a wizard, you may be put off by this anime at first. However, neither the virginity nor the wizardry really is a big part of this series. Well, that is to say, the main character, Adachi, doesn't have a wand and a broomstick. He mostly just wakes up on his 30th birthday and realizes he can read people's minds when they touch him. Accidentally finding out his coworker, Kurosawa, has a massive crush on him when he bumps into him. What ensues is a comical romance series between two salarymen with completely opposing personalities. You know what they say though. Opposites attract. Over the course of this 12-episode series, we see Adachi coming to terms with the fact that his coworker has a huge crush on him, as well as his own bubbling feelings that are coming forth, which he never would have thought he would have had. The anime doesn't really tackle any issues surrounding gay men, but it also doesn't really have to. It does a fantastic job of showcasing both the realization of your own sexuality, while also making it seem like it's no different than any other romance that we've been shown years before. My only negative about this show is that I had seriously no investment in the side couple. There were a couple episodes that were dedicated to just them, and each time I found myself just wanting it to go back to Adachi and Kurosawa. It's not like it pulled the entire focus away from the show, and I'm sure other people do enjoy their dynamic, so it's mostly just a me thing. However, despite this, Cherry Magic is still a laugh out loud funny and butterfly-inducingly sweet show that if you haven't watched it yet, you need to get on it right now. Now, contrary to popular belief, I am not immune to the hyped up shonen anime of the season. Even more so if that shonen series is going to be coming from anything other than Shonen Jump. And like everyone else, I found myself immensely enjoying Frieren this year. An anime that starts off in a pretty comfortable fantasy realm, traveling through countrysides and mountains, and as the trek continues, becomes a bit more of a typical shonen series. Madhouse Studios has had another great showing with this anime production. While I'm not much of an anime snob, I still found myself with my mouth agape while watching this one. If Madhouse is going to do one thing, they are going to make nature look so luscious that you want to step through that field, or action so intense that you find yourself gripped to the seat. But never fear. The characters are not overshadowed by the beauty of the animation. Frieren, our titular character, is just as compelling as anything else in the very strong first episode of this show. Later joined by Fern and Stark, with flashbacks of her former squad, this cast of characters is rounded out perfectly. While Stark fills the typical whiny character trope, he never gets too annoying like others in that archetype. Similarly, Fern is the typical tsundere character, but she never falls into it so much that it's just flanderized over 25 episodes. Even though Frieren is our main character, she doesn't have much of an internal dialogue, so a lot of the show is very show, don't tell. Often this works most in the show's favor when it's focused more on the slice of life aspects. I did have a few personal issues with Frieren, however. The show turns into a battle arc in the second half of the season, and it just really felt like a stark difference than what the anime was trying to be at first. Also, people get heated about this, but the demons being inherently evil does not work for me. This is a problem that a lot of fantasy series have always had for a long time, and Frieren is no exception for this regard. Other than this though, I wholeheartedly enjoyed this show, the characters, and the more subdued storytelling that was there for the majority of the anime. The last show that I'm going to talk about is probably the one that was the most anticipated for me for this year, which is Kimi ni Todoke Season 3. Bringing us back into Sawako's world as if she never left for a 13-year break in between seasons. Season 3 covers a lot of my favorite parts of the manga, but it was all done in 1-hour episodes with only 5 episodes in total. Netflix, when I find you. You may not even have remembered that this season came out because Netflix is a popularity killer with its binge model. Despite this though, Kimi ni Todoke Season 3 was like coming back home to a warm fire and a blanket wrapped around your shoulders. It puts us right into the first date between Sawako and Kazehaya after their big penultimate confession at the end of Season 2, easing us right back into the swing of things. This season takes us on sunny school trips and right into impassioned Christmas nights. Even through these big changes between months in the series, it never really feels like this 5-episode run was bloated in any way, and that's mostly because there is so much this anime could still do with the manga of Kimi ni Todoke. The theme around communication and relationships is still the main driving force in this season of the series as well, although it's done in a much more mature way, and many people would find it less frustrating than if they did in Season 2. Sawako and Kazehaya are grappling with their own desires. Yano is finding herself even more isolated from her friends as they all are getting into romance. And even Shizu has to come to terms with the fact that her own best friend likes her in a way that she doesn't know if she does too. It's all standard fare for a teen drama, but Kimi ni Todoke has always had a rawness to it that just sets it apart from the rest. The anime perfectly conveys the emotions that these 3 friends share throughout this arc of the manga, and it even ends on a pretty good note for the season as well. While I am still upset that Netflix and Production IG couldn't give us a full return of Kimi ni Todoke, I can't entirely complain considering the fact that it was a surprise that it even came back at all. From the limited release that we had, I was still given a beautifully crafted anime that transported me back to the first time I had read these chapters of the manga. Here's to hoping we don't have to wait 13 more years for a Season 4. I'll really quickly talk about some movies that I watched this year as well. I actually used to be a pretty big movie buff and even wanted to be a director back in high school, but ever since COVID, I really fell off of going to the theater, and because of that, I just don't watch movies much anymore. Which is a real bummer because I really love movies as an art form. Every year, I used to try watching all the Oscar-nominated movies that I could, but I barely get to one of them. So when I saw that a few of the winners from the 2023 Oscars were put on Hulu, I finally got to watch 2 whole Oscar-nominated movies. Starting with Poor Things, the discourse-generating film that was wacky, stunningly shot, and even a little bit creepy at times as well. All things that could probably be said for most of the director, Yorgos Lanthimos' work in general. Now, am I surprised about the chatter surrounding this movie on Twitter and TikTok? No. Absolutely not. It's pretty complex in its themes, and a lot of nuance gets lost in the sauce on these sites. Do I still think that there is criticism that can be levied on this movie? Yes. Absolutely. There is so much to love visually about this film, though. What starts in black and white as Emma Stone is basically confined to this house day in and day out soon turns into a wonderfully colorful Willy Wonka type world as she steps out those doors for the first time. It's a great representation for this character's journey as she essentially is a newborn who is figuring things out at an increasingly rapid speed. This color subdues gradually throughout the film though, as the reality of what the outside world is actually like starts to set in more and more for Stone's character. Now the story is what I find really interesting because it uses the born sexy yesterday trope while using its foundations to portray how actually sinister the implications of it can be. Whether you think it works for this story is up to you, but for me personally, I think it did a fairly good job at conveying this. Especially in showing how weird it can be for adult men being attracted to the youth of a woman, often because of the control that they can have over them. As soon as Stone's character starts to assert more confidence and dominance in their situations though, characters like Mark Ruffalo's starts to show more aggression towards her. I find that my criticisms towards this film are more in the back half, where the story kind of gets a bit more muddled. Their introduction of a sapphic relationship and the black characters that they introduced had a lot less fleshed out characterization than anyone else in the film. Also, just much of the ending, it didn't work for me. I do recommend you guys go check out Princess Week's criticisms and just the overall video that she made on Poor Things, because that is a really good video. Overall though, I did very much enjoy this strange but fantastical film and ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. The other 2023 film that I watched in 2024 was Anatomy of a Fall. I can't find a bigger picture, so this is what you get. A murder mystery drama that never really answers the question of who done it, but it also shouldn't. The first half of this movie is the investigation of a mysterious death of a husband who fell out of the window of an attic in a secluded home. While the second half of the movie is all about the courtroom drama where the gritty details of this couple's marriage are aired out in front of everyone. Bits and pieces of what could have happened in this case are given to us throughout the film, but we're never given conclusive evidence or told exactly what happened. You'll start off the film being kind of wary of the wife, and then by the end, you might start thinking, well, was this actually an accident? However, the main focus of this movie is not the mystery or who done it. It's the relationship between the husband and the wife. How women with families can often fall into the wife role, and how toxic masculinity can taint a once equal relationship. I'm not an actor or anything. I don't really know much about the technicalities of acting, so I don't know how to really applaud the acting in this movie, but just know It's incredible. These actors are acting the shit out of this film. It felt like my parents were fighting in another room while I was watching it, or the courtroom drama just had me so tense. This is such an incredible film. I really enjoyed watching it. It had me thinking so many things by the end of it. You know, it's just one of those ones where you walk out of the theater, well, you walk out of your living room where you watched it on TV and you just go, man, I'm gonna think about this for a long time, aren't I? Alright, so lastly, let's get into what I've spent most of my time doing this year, which is playing video games. Earlier this year on April Fool's, I did a joking stream where I was like, I'm done being a manga YouTuber, I'm a gaming YouTuber now, and honestly, it doesn't feel like that is wrong. When I hit that reading slump about halfway through the year, I was playing so much Mario Kart, it's insane. I just got my Switch wrapped and I played 150 hours this year. But I blame my OCD for making me have to distract myself so I don't do my routine hair checking. The first one I want to highlight is my favorite game of 2024, Crypt Custodian, a very charming Metroidvania by Kyle Thompson, who's made some other games that I've really enjoyed in the past few years, Sheepo and Islets. I actually first started playing Crypt Custodian without realizing that it was from this creator, and then I saw the usual blurbo creature style and went, yep, that's him. His games do often, in fact, have a more millennial style humor to them, but hey, I am a millennial. What can I say? The premise of this game is basically you play as this cat who comes to the afterlife and gets sentenced to cleaning up the world for eternity. I think the biggest highlights of Crypt Custodian is its really unique areas and the top-down playstyle. Angled down? It's less of like a top-down, but more like a, you know? The map areas include things like neon space clouds, rundown amusement parks, and treetop jungles. All whimsical in nature, while hitting you with some really brutal fighting as well. Thompson's games often have that dodge and attack fight style that something like Undertale does, which really adds to the cleverly cartoonish aura of the game. The story of this one is also a little more key than other entries in the studio's past. It isn't like the lore is incredibly deep or anything, but it is pretty sad as you're collecting snapshots of creatures that you're meeting in the afterlife and their backstories and what happened to them. Your interactions with these other creatures are always fun, despite the fact that, you know, sometimes how they got to the afterlife wasn't so fun. One of my favorite little guys that you meet in the game makes you spray paint on things, and you even get a section where you get to spray paint on the ground, and of course, I drew a dick. I don't think I'm really great at explaining game mechanics, but this game just really had a good mix of challenging and grueling fights while also just being very whimsical and fun. It wasn't so bad that I wanted to rage quit, but it also wasn't a walk in the park either. If you want a really fun introduction to Metroidvanias, then I would highly recommend Crypt Custodian. It's truly just the right amount of just being a very charming and fun game while also giving a challenge as well. You'll soon realize that I both love Metroidvania style games and something that I have dubbed the little guy game. Games where you play as a little guy of some sort. Others in this genre of little guy games would include Hollow Knight, Ori, Islets, Rain World, and so on. Although I fucking hate Rain World. Don't talk to me about that video game ever. Anyway, so when I heard that the first title from Donkey's publishing studio was out, and it was the exact kind of game that I love, I had to go get it. Animal Well was a vibey, old school aesthetic arcade side-scroller that was elevated by its really amazing graphics. You are immediately thrown into the world of Animal Well with no preamble or introduction. You're just a little white blob that runs around the winding winding, dimly lit underground. Along the way, you'll run into some curb-stomping kangaroos, some blob-hunting dogs, and hedgehogs with spikes that cause some serious damage. There's no real fighting in this game, only using the tools at your disposal to defend yourself. There's also no exact path that you have to take in this game either. You can get your frisbee first, or you can go get the bubble wand. The options of how you play are limitless. Animal Well really just throws you right into the game and lets you discover all the secrets on your own. Or, if you're like me, you were furiously Googling every now and then how to do something on the game on Reddit. I am just not as smart as some of these people who found these Easter eggs in this game. I would have never done the things they did. Oh yeah, and there's also literal Easter eggs that you collect in the game. I didn't even find or do everything that there is to do in this game, and I still got so many hours out of it. It's hard to put this one down, as every new mystery, every new room you find makes it almost impossible to stop playing. You just want to know what's going on. Animal Well was a really great first game for the creator Billy Basso, and it was almost just overwhelming how much stuff you could do in this. But even though it can feel daunting, everything in this game just makes you want to know more as you keep descending down that animal well. Wouldn't you know it? Another little guy game. This time isn't a Metroidvania though. Just an adventure puzzle game that has a similar feeling to Ocarina of Time, Tunic. This was a game that I literally just bought and had no clue what I was getting myself into. I saw it recommended on the PS5, I saw a little guy, I bought it. What ensued was some extreme confusion on what I was doing, some grueling combat, continual deaths, but admittedly, a lot of fun. Now, for anyone who has played this game, if you want to discount my enjoyment after I say that I had to do a lot of cheating to get through it, then I will not stop you from doing that. Basically, anything past the first bell in this game had me furiously looking up game guides and Reddit questions to just know what I am supposed to do. At times, just frustratingly exclaiming, where the hell am I supposed to go? Because the map wasn't telling me anything. This is also part of the fun though. The map is actually designed in this really unique way, as if it were a manual that you would have gotten in an N64 game. Each page that you find in the game gives you more insight into what you can do, the abilities that you have, and how you're actually supposed to play. Unfortunately for me, I am still very stupid, and I don't count that against the game, that's just myself. On top of this, the combat is absolutely brutal. The game masquerades itself as a cozy comfort game with wide open green fields. You feel comforted, you feel warm, and then you'll encounter a basic enemy and die like 20 times. A couple times I just thought I was in the wrong area because I could not get past what seems like just a regular enemy. This game really puts your brain to work in a lot of different ways, not just in puzzling, to get yourself to think of the best course of action so you can avoid enemies or just make sure that you don't die again. Where I'm sure a lot of fans of this game though will get frustrated with me is that I kind of accidentally cheated and didn't have to beat the final boss. In my defense, I didn't exactly realize what I was doing. It just kind of happened, and then I didn't really feel like going back. So if you want to say I didn't beat the game because I'm a filthy cheater, once again, I'm not going to stop you. Nonetheless, this is still a very well-constructed game with clearly so much thought put into it. Every nook and cranny has secrets to be explored, and the manual itself is just a well for gameplay. I recommend going into this one without knowing much of what's happening, just like I did, because you're going to feel very rewarded when you figure out a puzzle all on your own. Not quite a little guy game, more like a big boy game. But next we have Neva, the second game from the studio that brought you the visual masterpiece that is Grease. One of the most beautiful games I have ever played. But But now that title goes to Neva, as this studio really stepped up their game from their last entry. Much like Grease, Neva is also a more simple puzzle platform game that focuses more on the luscious worlds and masterful color schemes. That isn't to say there is no story at all, just that the puzzles themselves are quite easy. Neva does actually have more of a story than their previous work Grease does. Starting us off with an unknown substance coming and killing our main protagonist's dog and leaving her other dog and her to go on an adventure to find what this unknown substance is. Traversing through beautiful flower fields, climbing up high mountains, and falling down red-filled skies. Each set piece leaves you in awe as you play this game. As a photographer myself, scenes were leaving me in such awe that I was taking screenshots as if the game was Pokemon Snap. Now, you may be wondering, Colleen, can I pet the dog though? Yes, you can pet the dog for hours if you so choose. In fact, one of the main parts of the game is that you can pet the dog. You can call your dog to you. You can fight with your dog. Neva is my dog now. That's my baby. I raised them. But like I said, neither the combat nor the puzzles are especially challenging in this game. If you want a more complex platformer, you're gonna want to go play Celeste or something else instead. But if you want a beautifully crafted and extremely emotional story, then you need to play Neva. I won't spoil anything, but at the end of this game, I was full on sobbing. Alright, and since we have come to the end of the list, what else would I add other than a game that I am currently playing right now? I knew Nine Souls was coming out soon, but when I saw that it had dropped, I had to get it, and now I am obsessed with it. Yes, it's another little guy game, but guys, I promise, this one is different. The cat is really hot. In fact, this game may just turn you into a furry. Big booby furry cat ladies and shredded looking lion men? Sign me up. This is a Metroidvania that is not like any that I have played before because this one has been much more violent. I'm not gonna sit here and act like there's not violent Metroidvania games out there. I know there's series like Bloodstained, but I have not played it yet. So it's not like I'm saying, ooh, this one is edgy. It's not like other Metroidvanias. It's just that this one is a little more fucked up than I'm used to. It's also different than other ones I've played in its combat system. I have seen a lot of different places kind of liken it to Sekiro because it has more of a parry and slash system rather than dodging. I've gotten so used to dodging being the main form of fights in Metroidvanias like Hollow Knight or Ender Lilies, so having to get used to parrying was definitely a learning curve for me, but now that I've gotten the hang of it, I'm definitely enjoying it. I also really appreciate how much went into the design and aesthetic of this game. The aesthetic evokes a more Chinese village from the olden days while also having a lot of digital aspects to it as well. Adding to this vibe, you also have all of the voice actors, I believe, speaking Mandarin, and cutscenes are shown in a comic book format instead of being like an animated scene. Since I am in the middle of playing this game, I've only collected 4 out of the 9 souls so far. I can't say too much about it. So far, the only complaints I have are the boss fight I'm in has a 3-phase fight and it's terrible and grueling and I still haven't beat it after 3 days. And my other complaint so far has been the treatment of the female characters out of the bosses that you fight. Let's say it's a little more punishing than the male characters. It's weird to say male, female, they're fucking cats, but like they are so obviously sexed. One has big boobs and the other is a just shredded ass lion dude. Even with those criticisms though, I am still having so much fun with this game. It's definitely gonna be a contender for one of my favorite Metroidvania games if it continues down the same path. And that concludes all my favorites of this year. 2024 has been a really great year for the arts, and because of this, I wanted to make sure I diversified all of the things I was consuming and all of the arts that I was engaging in. Some of the things I really tried to do differently this year that didn't make the list were like listen to new music, where I found Dochi's new album and absolutely love it. But I also just really wanted to read some good manga this year, as always. Yeah, did you guys forget? I'm a manga channel. I almost forgot. The things I've listed are only a fragment of what I enjoyed this year, but they have also been so impactful in some way. Entering into 2025, where AI has started to take more and more creative jobs away from fabulous artists who have made all the things I've talked about today, I'm going to try and be more conscious to talk about art in a way that highlights the people who create them. A manga like Sword of Paros, games like Neva, and movies like Poor Things could never have made me sit down and think about them for months after the fact if they weren't created by humans who have emotional attachment to them. Overall, I have ended this year on a pretty shitty note, I will say so. But I know next year as well, I will always have these new worlds that I can enter into to either keep my brain more engaged than it ever has been, or just escape when I need to. This video should be coming out after Christmas, so I hope you guys had a fantastic Christmas or holiday break. I also hope you guys ate a lot of good food and are ready to go into 2025 in action. If you are an American, that is, because we have a lot of systematic fuck-ups that I'm sure we will encounter in the coming year. In the meantime though, thank you my hojos for watching. Welcome to any new hojos. Reach Shihaya Furu in 2025 if you haven't. And I'll see you guys in the next video.